everybody, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from the kitchen of the Grow Together homestead where I have started my winter sowing season. This is very exciting to me. It's always really hard waiting to start, but here in the Chinook region, that's a good thing to do because we do have such erratic temperature changes, January and early February here. So we're moving into the end of February, and this is when I can start putting my hardy perennials out in milk jugs. So you might be asking, what is all this milk jug planting about, or why would you want to do that? Well, since I moved to the Canadian prairies about 15 years ago, I've discovered that we can have snow in any month of the year. And I'm not joking, I've seen snow in July and August here even. And we have a very short season between frosts to be planting stuff. So why not embrace something that takes that cold weather and actually helps my seeds to start? I used to spend a whole lot of time and effort every spring and money starting seeds inside under grow lights, and they'd have to be watered and they'd have to be misted and they'd have to have all this stuff going on with them that I had to do daily maintenance to make sure that everything was going to be okay and I was going to get able to have a nice set of seedlings to send into the garden. I lost a lot of my seedlings doing inside starts because they did need daily maintenance, and if I wanted to go away for a weekend, often friends and family don't understand what's required. This method though, with the milk jugs, is really a sort of set it and forget it type of thing. One of my very good friends has coined it as benign neglect, and I agree 100%. With the milk jug method, you can space out your timing for getting your seedlings out, and I usually plant about 100 jugs a year at least. And if I were to try to do all that planting in one day, I'd lose my mind. Whereas with this, I can just sit down and do 10 or so in the morning. I'm only going to have time to do 4 today because I do have to get up and teach a workshop on this. But it's a way of spacing out the work that it takes to get all my seedlings ready for my garden, because I do have a very large garden here on the Grow Together homestead. And I also like to expand it every year. And I also help family and friends expand their gardens as well. So I have got a lot of seedlings that I've got to create every year. And this is one of the ways that I found that I can do that without it being too onerous. It's also really fun to be able to get my hands dirty during the winter because I love planting, and this gives me a little bit of that planting fix. But most of all, I've discovered that I actually get better seedlings this way because this method does use Mother Nature to do the heavy lifting. A lot of seeds require stratification, okay, especially hardy perennial seeds, which is what I'm going to be planting today. I'm going to be planting 4 different hardy perennials today, and in the southern Alberta or Chinook region of the prairies, that is what you want to be starting at the end of February, beginning of March, is those hardy perennials. You don't want to be putting out your other more tender veggies yet. I will make more videos as I'm putting those out, but hardy perennials, a lot of them really do require a stratification of their seed. Stratification is the breaking of the seed coat. It usually uses, and in this case, with the milk jug planting, you're using moisture and cold to break that seed coat so that your seed can germinate. So you might have seen in a lot of seed packets to put something in the fridge or to nick it. But with this, you don't have to do that because Mother Nature is going to do that for you. So first of all, it's going to use the cold, which is something that we definitely have enough of here in the prairies. And if you think that you're too late to start, because I know that a lot of the winter sowing stuff that you may have seen is from areas where it's a lot warmer. I know that a lot of folks who are in Oregon and California and Arizona are doing this. They have extremely different growing seasons than we do. They are often putting their seedlings into the ground at the time that it would be right to start seeds here, because stratification usually requires 4 to 8 weeks. So if you are late to the game and maybe you're watching this video in April and thinking, oh no, I'm too late, I can't start, I really want to try this method, but I can't start. I only heard about winter sowing the first time in April when I did it my first year, and that's when I started putting stuff out, and it worked great because I still had lots of time for that cold stratification to occur. Here on the prairies, we often have our last frost, well, me on my place, because it's a windswept plain, I often have my last frost mid-June, okay? And I know that a lot of people who live in the prairies, when I look at first and last frost dates across the Canadian prairies, and in lots of places in Canada, I see that there's a lot of people are dealing with May and June planting. If you have your last frost in May and June, that's when you don't want to be starting a lot of your gardens until then. So if it's April, you probably still have plenty of time if you live in one of these regions. April is when I start doing my plantings with my more tender annuals. And I used to only do hardy perennials with this, but now I do almost everything. Every year I expand, and it's really been amazing for me. I hope you'll try it, even if you just do an experiment. And I know a lot of people have done this where they'll start some inside and start some outside of the same varieties and see how it goes. And that's what I did the first year. And I discovered, I'm going to be just doing, every year I do more and more in the milk jugs outside because it is such a great method. The best thing though that I found with these milk jugs is hardy seedlings that I get, and the lack of hardening off that I need to do, and the lack of transplanting that I need to do. A lot of you are probably spending a lot of time in the spring planting up your seedlings, trying to find room inside your house. You no longer feed your family and your kitchen table because it's covered in plants. And yeah, that's okay. That's what gardeners do. But if you want to have it be less onerous, this is great because these are not requiring any planting out. Basically, you're allowing the seedling to grow into here. And then, so the first we're taking advantage of the cold for the stratification. And then what's happening is these become little mini greenhouses. They have a nice little translucent top here. They allow some sun in. They allow precipitation in. You want to leave that lid off. And then what happens is it retains the humidity. It retains some heat. It's amazing the difference in temperature that you can see inside a milk jug versus outside a milk jug. So once those seedlings do germinate at the right time, and you're going to drive yourself crazy peeking every day, they won't be coming up crazy early. You don't want them to come up until they're supposed to, which is, going to be in April and May, because that's going to give you that time to get stuff into the ground and for it to grow. What's going to happen is it's going to protect your seedlings, your young tender seedlings, from things like predators, from things like crazy wind, as long as you place these correctly, from things like hail, which is a serious thing that we have to deal with here on the prairies. And then you're going to open it up. You're going to allow it to adjust just a little bit, but you're certainly not going to be doing the crazy hardening off in and out, in and out, in and out every day, dropping seedlings. I have to say that these milk jugs probably protect the seedlings from me just as much as they do from anything else out there, because I'm a very clumsy person. And then you're going to put them in the ground, and I have found that even the seedlings that were smaller in these than the ones that say I may have started inside, the seedlings that I grow in here, because they've been outside and exposed to the elements, catch up, have less root problems. It's great. They're ready to go, and I'm never going to look back, I'm sure, using that here. Now, you may have noticed that I've been preparing these jugs. What I've been doing is punching in tons and tons of drainage holes. Then I cut the jugs so there's a hinge here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some pre-moistened soil. And I want it to be quite moist, okay? So that it's holding its shape. Remember how I said seed stratification required moisture and cold? Well, that's what this is doing. What's going to happen is you're leaving it open and exposed to the elements outside. Precipitation will be able to enter this chamber. And because it is closed with just that little opening at the top, it's amazing that the humidity and the moisture that is retained in here. I often don't have to start watering these from the bottom. Basically what I'll do is once the seedlings start to grow is usually when I have to start worrying about watering them. You basically just lift these up, and if they are light, then it's time to water them. I put them in a basin of water from below. So what I'm doing is I'm putting 3 to 4 inches of this soil, and I want to make sure I'm getting a good amount in there, because these are going to have these are going to be good sized seedlings by the time they come out of here. So you want to make sure that you have enough room for some good root growth. I don't use shallow containers at all, say like a clamshell container for winter sowing. Use those for other things because I want to ensure that I have enough space for good root growth and good seedling growth. And a milk jug is pretty perfect for that. So I'm filling this up. I'm using, I know that for a lot of seed starting, you don't want to be, a lot of people use the seed starter mix that doesn't contain any fertilizer at all. But I really like this mix. This is a very lightly fertilized, fluffy soil mix, and I find it's just the perfect combination. I've played with lots and lots and lots of other soils over time, and this is really my favorite for winter sowing. It's the Pro Mix Organic Herb and Veggie. It also has been inoculated with mycorrhiza, we'll just call it mites to make it easy, which is a really beneficial fungi that helps with your root growth. I've done experiments with that, and yes, it's true. The mites really, really does help. Your soil is not a dead thing. When I see people cooking their soil in the oven, part of me dies inside. Soil is a living thing naturally. 1 teaspoon of garden soil out in your yard there contains more life than people there are on the planet. There's like billions of little entities living in that soil. Mycorrhiza is one of the things that's in your soil that's natural. And this garden soil has been inoculated with it. So that's going to help your root growth because that mycorrhiza, what it does is it helps to do that nutrition exchange between the plant and the soil. It basically forms a symbiotic relationship and it's really cool. It works great. So I do like to use this. I find that this Pro Mix Organic Herb and Veggie, it's light enough for my seeds to start, but it's just rich enough to provide some nutrition for my seedlings until they get large enough to be able to get the nutrition from the sunlight. So here we go. We've got 4 jugs here, all nicely filled with some good moist soil. Now I'm going to open up these packs and I'm going to start putting these babies in. I've chosen 4 different hardy perennials here, which are hardy to my Zone 3 garden. I've got some lovage. I normally like to get lovage from splits, but as I am helping a few other people this year and my own lovage plant isn't huge yet, I know it will be, I'm just going to start a few plants extra as well. It's a really good idea if you have a seed pack to try to follow those instructions pretty carefully. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make with their winter sowing the first time is they overplant. They figure there's no way this is going to work, so they overplant. But what they're doing then is they're creating too much root entanglement. And yeah, those first ones that you do where you overplant are not going to be your best examples of how winter sowing works because you've got too many seedlings. I know having too many seedlings might be a silly problem to have, but when you're trying to detangle them when it comes time to transplant, it's a bit of an issue and you could lose lots of plants that you didn't have to because you overplant. So do try to space them out a little bit more. These are pretty good sized seeds. I'm just going to do a very light sprinkle because I don't want to have, I've got about 10 seeds here. I'm going to put another nice little layer because it's saying that it should be 1/4 inch deep. You do also want to try not to plant your seeds too deep in these or in any case. Now I've got my seeds in here. Now it's really, really important to label properly. I used to use Sharpie pens and relabel, but invariably that's going to wash off. I find that these paint pens work a little bit better. But that being said, I'm going to label on the outside. I'm also going to label on the inside. I'm going to put the date on because that helps me with my records. I do keep records of when I started stuff, and sometimes I'll start a plant at different times to see what's going to be best. So it's February 18th for me today, so I'm putting that on there. And then the other thing I like to do is prepare a few tags in advance. That's just going to save me some time later in the season when it does come time to plant these up. I place those tags so that they're sort of in a handle because that's not good. I don't want things to grow up in there anyways. So let's see, what have I done so far? I have punched in the drainage holes. I put about 12 in the bottom and some along the sides as well, just slightly up from the the bottom. I do use, I should have said that earlier, I like a corkscrew to use it. I then have cut this and I've left a hinge. I've planted it up. I've labeled really well. And now for the last part, duct tape. I'm going to duct tape this up so that it's going to hold together the little mini greenhouse. Now, when it comes to the duct tape that you're going to use, you just want to use a good quality one. I found that, you know, if you cheap out too much, this duct tape's not going to hold together. You also do not want to have it be too powerful. I used that Gorilla Tape one year and I had to cut these open. And when I was cutting them up, I accidentally damaged a few of my seedlings because that stuff just held. Okay? I now have it for other things around the homestead, but when it comes to milk jug planting, good old duct tape. I think that the brand I use is that Duck brand, and it works great. It's going to hold together. I'm going to have to move these around every once in a while, and you don't want it to drop out from underneath you while you're moving around, right? What I'm going to do with these, I'm going to keep working away here at these and get this all finished up. And then I'm going to go place all these jugs that I create today out in a snow bank. I usually place them into a garden bed, and if there's snow around, I shovel snow onto that. I don't want these to start germinating. I want them to be nice and insulated in that snow until it's time for the seeds to wake up. One thing I'd like you to take away from this video is a lot of people are stressed about timing. Let's look at these crazy temperatures that we have in Canada as a positive. That's what that winter sowing has done for me. Now I have an extended winter sowing season. I can start now. I'm going to be planting things in milk jugs and other winter sowing containers well into April. So that means I can really space out my planting and space out my seed sowing. If you want to see that schedule, I am going to be continuing to post whenever I do plant a different type of plant. Today it's hardy perennials. I'll be starting with vegetables and more tender things in a couple more weeks, 3 to 4 more weeks. I'll be starting that stuff, and I'll post when I do that. Please do send lots of questions. I really would love to hear what you'd like to know, and subscribe, because there are over 20 videos here on the channel about different methods of winter sowing and different aspects of winter sowing if you need more information. So please do send me questions if there's stuff that I haven't covered yet and you want to see. And as always, I hope you'll take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.